Welcome to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare, recovery coach professional. Do you love food, alcohol, drugs, sex, social media, cigarettes, or gambling a little too much? The traditional narrative says that addiction to these vices is the problem. The truth is, they are just symptoms. This hit show takes you from recovery to your ultimate life as my special guests and I help you discover how underneath every vice is the addiction to the suffering that developed due to unhealed trauma. So what can you do? Hungry for Answers provides groundbreaking, proven solutions from my best-selling spiritual book, Feast and Famine: Healing Addiction with Grace. It's time to stop suffering and start living your ultimate life. You have a divine right to a life filled with love, joy, peace, and abundance. Hungry for Answers starts now. Hello, everybody. It's Robin Clare, and welcome to Hungry for Answers. Today, I have my friend and colleague, Maureen Gemme, with me. Maureen has been on the show before, and she is the founder of the Emerge Leadership Academy. And Maureen, I know you've answered this question for us before, but it's always worth asking again. Was there a time in your life where you were so hungry for answers that you weren't really sure where the answers were coming from? And then once the answers were given to you, how did it change your life?
Oh yeah, thank you, Robin. Glad to be back. And that is, I guess, always been one of those things. But I remember it as a time in my life when I was constantly running away from chaos that I was creating in my life, but also running towards what I knew was potential that I had. But I had no idea how to get it. But I was constantly trying to find it outside of myself. I thought my happiness lay, in my job or in my boyfriend or in my, my car, my brand new car, or any of these other substances and the good times that I was trying to have. And honestly, until I finally slowed down and looked within and stopped trying to escape, right, with all using substances, that's when I finally started getting some answers, and my whole life changed. My personality changed. My spirituality changed, my relationships changed, my jobs changed. I mean, every single thing in my life changed. But it wasn't just like, boom, awesome. No, it was it was a series of transformations over time that continue to shape who I am today, and always going back within to get those answers.
Yeah, so I think that's the key you're talking about, is that this journey of recovery, while it seems to the outside world to be a very outside experience, right? It's really an inner experience as well. And maybe even more so, because what I've discovered is that, unless I'm healing the original trauma that created my need, well, that created the suffering in my life,
Mm-hmm.
that created a need for me to feel better, which created a need for me to use, in my case, food. Um, that is inner work 100%, this
Mm.
healing of the trauma patterns. And so, did you have to go through something like that in your life? Like, were you open to the traditional? Because I know you and I are both very spiritual and really into that stuff, and we'll get more into that later. But were you also open to the traditional paths to recovery that are offered out in the world?
Well, yes, I my first introduction to quote spirituality was religion, right? And so
Mhm.
I was born and raised, Irish Catholic, and I went through catechism, I knew what sin was, and I really punished myself because I knew what a bad girl I was, right? So in my teenage years, I was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and that led me to some pretty dark places. And I was not okay. I knew, I thought everybody said, oh, well, Jesus loves you and all of that stuff. And honestly, I knew that it wasn't true because I had I had broken so many rules. And I also didn't feel good about all of that stuff. So as I was chasing that high and trying to constantly escape my pain, my suffering got worse because I was, just dealing with guilt and shame all the time, all the time. As I continued to look for people to fill that hole, or a job or money or things to fill it, it wasn't being filled. So when I first reached out for help and got some help, I did go to an AA program, right? So I went through the 12 steps. And I did also get into therapy because I needed another perspective. What was going on in my head was not good. It was not good at all. And
Yeah.
even 37 years later, it's cunning, baffling, and powerful, is what they say. But it wasn't until I was probably about 5 years sober that I started to get outside of that traditional way of getting sober. And I started to look at people who channeled and understanding what kind of intuitive guidance I could really tap into, and began to listen to myself and go within and really start getting some of that guidance from here, and also from like psychics and other friends that were interested.
Mhm.
And now I got like 10 decks of oracle cards and a bunch of different tarot card decks. And I think that there are signs and ways that the universe is talking to us all the time, if we would just open our eyes and look, and also close our eyes and look within. But is that kind of what you're talking about? Like
It
that?
is what I'm talking about too,
Yeah.
because I also think that like something in our life could be perceived as a physical distress. But inside that physical distress, if you go inside, so I've been dealing with a lung issue. I live in New England, and I'm allergic to wet fallen leaves. So
Me too.
why I do that, who the heck knows? But you too. That's interesting. And so I'm dealing with this uh, chronic cough. So I apologize, everybody, if I cough on the show. And yet when I was doing work with my therapist yesterday, we closed I closed my eyes and I went into my lungs and looked at what was going on in there, because I could feel that there was something there. And then there was some emotional work that I had to release in my life that's also corresponding at the same time, some shift and transformation in my life. So I could see that there was emotion in there as well. And so I had to clear the emotion. So this is really important conversation, because I'm not sure that everybody knows that in alignment with our physical distress is emotional distress and
Hmm.
imbalance. And they say that this emotional stress is in our energetic field, and the physical distress is in our physical field, or our body. And so the stress in our emotional field is called dis-ease, and the stress in our physical body is called disease. And so it's really important to look at the two at the same time. So that was just really interesting yesterday. I could see what the situation was, and I was able to move it. So today I'm still dealing with the physical distress, but I feel so much better about it.
Oh, good, good. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that helps it clear a lot. It will help it clear a lot quicker. I've
Mm.
been having a sore throat almost every day for a week now. And of course, my first thought is, oh, is it COVID? Is it? No, it's not. I get this every single year, usually around the beginning of October, and it's hitting me for some reason in the beginning of November. But nevertheless, there's a lot of clearing there. And I do know that we are all these energetic beings. And you know all this, but for the listeners, like I have a course called Recovery at Work, and people think that I want to get to the next level of where I want to be in my life. And so, help me to update my resume, help me to do some good behavioral interviewing. Let's data mine my past experiences and how it might apply to the future. And I say, whoa, 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 let's step back a minute. Let's look at clearing away some of the crap in your past. And first you have to understand that you're an energetic human being. And as that, we are holding a lot of emotional blocks within our body. So we look at past conditioning, past values conditioning, and attitude conditioning, and beliefs conditioning, and sort of look at what might be holding us back. And a lot of times it's not forgiving, it's holding on to resentments or not forgiving something that we've gone through. And sometimes it's not forgiving ourselves. It's
Correct.
really hard, right? When the stuff that we did to ourselves when we were in active addiction is not pretty. And it's really hard. The first is that we allow other people to love us. And then we, over time, begin to really love ourselves. But even now, I'm working with a client who's having a tough time forgiving herself for what she did because she's still dealing with consequences. And that's why, when we deal with consequences, but boy, that energy that will get stuck in your body.
It will, and
So
it will move to, it will manifest in the physical. So so healing the energetic patterns is so important, so important.
You wrote about that in your second book.
I did. I wrote about it, probably covered it in all my books because I know how important it is, because for me, it was, where was I at in each stage?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, because we are growing, we're growing every day. We're following I believe that we're following our soul's desired journey. And so all of these things that transpired in the past were just part of our journey of our soul to be able to give us lessons that we need to learn and heal. So for those of you that are struggling with what you did in the past, it's not about the struggle of what you did in the past. It's about learning the meaning for your life and the meaning for your soul's growth, and then allowing that to heal. So those memories are not going to go away. They're part of who you are, but you don't have to struggle and suffer from them. So
you can live them a different way. That's what Paul says. You
yes,
can live it differently. Yeah.
yes, you can. Yes, you can. So Paul is Maureen's husband, who is also in long-term recovery. And yeah, it's very interesting. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is, we are in recovery at work and at home. Do you think that one is harder than the other?
Well, yes. Now, don't ask me which one. Because, it's funny because I was just writing about that. I sent out a newsletter this morning because there were times in my life that I remember just watching the clock like, oh, please God, when can I get out of this place? I can't stand it. I don't like this job. Or, there's a person here that's really irritating me. Sometimes it's just a matter of, I don't want to deal with the vibrations because I had to put on a facade. I am a very open-hearted person, but when you're in a corporate environment all the time and everybody's in their head, sometimes I had to physically cover my heart with a pad. I'd get a pad and I would hold it up here, like even in a meeting sometimes, just because there was so much, crap going on. And then other times, then you get home and it's like, oh, I can be my authentic self. And then sometimes that's where you allow yourself to feel your emotions. And who do we always hurt the most? The people that we love, right? Because stuff just comes out. So it's hard to be there too sometimes if you're always being authentic, or, it depends what kind of personality you have, I think, because sometimes I would want to have a difficult conversation with Paul, but I'd say, well, he's in such a good mood today. I don't really want to bring down the energy here. Or, you know what? He's in such a bad mood. This would be a horrible blowout if he's not in a good place in order to have this conversation. Well, then when is a good time to have this conversation?
Right?
Right? Yeah. So it's hard. I can't tell you which one is better or worse, but there were sometimes I couldn't wait for Sunday to end so I could get back to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's different. And different at different times of my life. When I had a little one, I remember going to work and saying, oh, thank God I am not a full-time mother. I just I couldn't do it. And other people, they go to work and they say, oh my God, how come I'm here? I should be with my kids. It's such a struggle, war, isn't it?
It is. And yet we're required to be in recovery in all parts of our lives. And
Yeah.
Maureen and I had a mutual friend, Jatine Desai, who passed away. And I remember when they came out with the expression work-life balance, he's like, what is that? Are we not living at work? Like he was really upset over that. He goes, how can they call that work-life balance? Like life didn't matter. At work. And yet I think it really does. I think it really does. And in our next segment, we're going to really talk about that. We're going to talk about, are employees suffering at work, and how do you come into recovery in both your personal life and your professional life? Because for sure, what we know is it's everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Wherever you go, there you are, right? And you have to, and that's what a lot of Maureen's work is about your recovery at work. And when she first told me about it, I thought she was talking about recovery at work, at your workplace. And she said, no, it's really about, are you are you working your recovery? Is your recovery at work? And I thought, well, that's great, but it's also true. Is your
It's both.
recovery
Yes.
at work, right? Are you able to sustain your recovery at work, or are you freaking out at work, or are you getting into some other bad habits at work because you cannot manage your recovery at work? So we're going to talk more about that when we come back from the break. And so you're listening to Hungry for Answers, and I'm here with my dear friend, Maureen Gemme from Emerge Leadership Academy, and we'll be right back. Thank you very much. Hello, and welcome back to Hungry for Answers. This is Robin Clare. To learn more about my work, please go to clarity.com. That's CLARE-ITY.com. And I'm here with Maureen Gemme from Emerge Leadership Academy. And Maureen, can you share with our audience how they can reach you?
Yeah, thanks. You can always reach me by going to my website, Emerge Leadership Academy, 3 words, but all together.com. And while you're there, take the quiz and find out which animal best represents your leadership style. It's really fun. It's a little personality quiz, and I am a personality expert. So if you ever want to get to know yourself better, come and visit me at emergeleadershipacademy.com.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this segment, I wanted to talk a little bit about, we're talking about, in general, we're talking about recovery at work and recovery at home, and how they might be different, but they're both required. And so this next segment is about business. And one of the things that we know for sure, Maureen, is that companies want 100% employee engagement, right? How we've heard that for 30 years, like it's one of those buzz phrases. But I've always felt that companies do not allow the entire employee to come to work. If we are an integrated being of mind, body, spirit, and emotion, is corporate America allowing, we know they want the mind for sure. And if they're fortunate during this COVID time, they'll let the body in, right? But they want you present. They want your mind. They want you physically present at work, even if it's in Zoom. But I've always felt that they've left the spirit and the emotion at the door. It's almost like there's a revolving door and you leave your spirit and your emotion outside, which to me only says that employees must be suffering at work, because they cannot express themselves and they cannot live their true nature. What do you think about that?
Well, for 50% of the population, they're happy to leave their emotions at home and come to work and just focus on what needs to be done. And they're pleasant and they do it. And then there's another 50% of us that have much more, we wear our heart on our sleeve. And it's much more difficult to hide when we're unhappy with something or we're confused or we're angry. And so conflicts happen sometimes at work and people don't know how to deal with them because we don't get a lot of training for that. Oftentimes, I have no idea what kind of household you were raised in, but everybody sort of assumes that people should know, or people should just get it, or people should be like me and how I see things. And we all have different mindsets depending on who we are in our personality and who we are in our attitudes, in our values, and all of our conditioning and our beliefs. Our beliefs have so much to do with things. So as we come to work all day and we have to focus all day long on just getting stuff done, people who work with other people, they need to have the soft skills to do that, right? The leadership skills, the communication skills to do it. If you're just working in a cubicle all day on code or whatnot, and that's your forte, then that's great too. But you still need to communicate with people, and you just can't always leave your emotions at home or in check. So that's what causes, I think, a lot of the conflicts. And I do think that there's just not enough training for people in the workplace to understand how we can work together and have those synergies and really have a good team building, kind of atmosphere. Does that make
So
sense?
it does make sense, but do you think companies maybe don't want to recognize the spirit and the emotion? Like, is it
Well,
safer
there
not
are.
to?
There absolutely are. If you want to keep your employees, you better, right? But there's a
Mhm.
lot of them that are still old school. Nope, you're just here to do this job, push this pencil, or they don't use that term anymore, but type this data, whatever it is. But there are companies who are starting to open up, and they do provide help for people, because as we continue to stuff our feelings, it's going to come out. It's going to come out inappropriately if we don't ever learn how to feel them. And it comes out a lot at work. And sometimes that looks like people just checking out. Sometimes it looks like people, kind of imploding or exploding at the job as well. And we need to be able to recognize those signs and symptoms and give them the help that they need, and actually listen with empathy. Our leaders need more empathetic listening and be able to provide the tools that some of our employees need, because and even it's time of COVID, they've been home, a lot of us, for a year and a half. Some of them are like, let me back in, I want back in.
Yes.
And others are like, no, I don't want to go back to the office. And it depends on who you are. But if you don't have the tools, it can be really difficult.
Yeah. So would you agree that we're now in an age where if we do want high employee engagement, we have to honor the integrated human, the
Oh,
mind,
yes.
body, spirit, and emotion?
Yes, 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 yes. And in fact, those companies are providing wellness programs. They're providing meditation rooms. They're providing nap rooms. They're providing, go in and have a little, meeting rooms that people can get together and do that. They are providing the tools, the programs, yoga during lunch, meditation in the morning. I do know of some companies that are doing that, large companies like Google does it, so, but not all of them. And some are definitely not. You have to do it on your own time, because there people, I mean, businesses are trying to get more done with a lot fewer people. So it doesn't leave a lot of time for social. And I know of some people who are working 60, 70 hours a week just to get it all done, you know. And that's sad. That's sad for me. That is not
It
a
is,
balance.
that's not a balance. And I think too, there's this idea that if you're working from home, you don't need to take a lunch hour
Oh my. Yeah, no, I
or a
would
lunch
never,
or a lunch half hour, whatever it
I would
is.
never work for somebody like that. No, I never have. And but that's funny because I had a really successful career, but I'll tell you something now that I'm not there anymore. I will say it publicly. I never, rarely did I ever work more than 45 hours in a week. I worked my 40 hours and I got my work done and I got it done great. And then I went home and I took every day of my paid vacation because that's, life. Like let's have a good time while we're doing it. I think a lot of those restrictions are self-imposed. I do not blame employers. We're going to be victims if we think we're victims. And then once we get past that, we're not victims anymore. We have choice. You don't need to just take a half an hour for lunch. You don't. You just need to manage expectations of your work. And if you can't get it done, let them know it's not, it's going to be a little later than expected or something like that. But
Yeah.
for people who demand to me to work through my lunch or to work through dinner or to work up until 11 o'clock at night, I'm not working there. I'll tell you that. And that's my choice.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading an article about some companies now that they have a meeting first thing in the morning. All groups have a meeting and they
Okay.
talk about what needs to get done that day. And then they're not allowed to communicate with each other the rest of the morning.
Oh,
And then maybe they have another meeting midday. But some companies actually, just to check in, one meeting, the whole team shows up. Let's talk about what happened this morning. Let's talk about what you need to accomplish, what you need to get done this afternoon. And then they don't hear from anybody again for the entire afternoon. More, I guess if they're waiting for information, you can send information, but there's none of this conversation about what are we going to do and what's happening. It's not no planning meetings, I guess would be the best way to describe it. That way, people actually are very well informed of what they need to get done, and then they have time to do it.
well, I think that that's really highly dependent on what are you doing? What is your
Yeah.
business? What do you
Mhm.
need to do? Because there are, for leadership, for example, there are certain lead meetings that I'm going to lead with my team. And then I need to meet with some peers to find out if we're still in synergy. Then might need to meet with superiors to find out, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's a meetings all day kind of a job anyways. If you're in retail, yeah, let's have a quick meeting in the morning, find out what's everything needs to be done, and then you go off and leave me alone. Let me just do my job. I don't
Mhm.
need, support and all this communication. And it's the same in manufacturing as well. But in other cases like project management, there's a lot of different balls in the air. And I don't think you can just be alone all the time. If you can, great. That's, great.
Mhm.
And if you do need it, focus time, you block off your calendar and just say that you have meetings going on and then everybody leaves you alone. So there's a lot of ways that you can get around that, but I
Yeah.
think it depends on what your business is.
Yeah, and it was just interesting when I was reading about it. I apologize, everyone. I'm not sure what that methodology is called, but I think you could easily look it up because I do think there's a lot of disruptions that happen because people take the easy way out of asking people for information that they could
Or for
either
help.
research themselves or make a decision. So one of the things you said to me, you were talking to me on the break about helping leaders to understand who they truly are, and one of the things, who they are as a person, their personality, what kind of leadership style they have. And you said that a lot of times what you're finding is that people just don't know who they are,
Mm.
and that seemed to be interesting to you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, because I worked so diligently to figure out who I was so that I could live fully and be myself, my authentic self in my 20s and then in my 30s. I got really into personality type to really figure out who I was. And I studied Myers-Briggs for a decade, then I studied the Enneagram for a decade, and now this past decade, I've been studying and using the Everything Disc because that one really applies to work and to leaders. So there's a little bit of a cross between knowing who you are and authentically being able to express yourself, but also reining it in sometimes as a leader to be able to be there for the different variety of people that you're dealing with throughout the day. So some people say, well, that's not authentic. Yeah, well, I just can't go in and be my happy, creative, chaotic self all the time when sometimes I need to rein it in and be serious and listen and, do the things that need to get done. So you can learn so much about yourself. But what I find is when people get into living and they don't have a program of recovery like I had, they often fall into what first they go to school with for what their parents tell them they should go to school for, or what their coach told them they were good at and they should go to school for, some teacher or whatever. And then they get a family and they fall in love and they start a family, and it's constant serving of the family and raising the family, going to work and making the money and paying the bills and blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly there's empty nest and there's a little bit of a midlife thing going on. Maybe there's a health crisis, maybe there's a relationship crisis, or maybe you wake up at work one day and say, what the hell am I doing here? Like this, I don't even like it. You start to explore who you really are. And as you dig deeper, you go to people like me and you say, I don't really know what I want to do yet, but I want to reinvent myself. And I say, well, do you like this or do you like that? And I get, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And I'm like, how can you not know? Because I've put so much focus on my own
Right.
self. But as people go through this process, they do have a transformation. If they go through and they start, piece by piece, taking the steps to personal growth, they can then emerge and then lead others along the way, whether it's through giving up an addiction or just stepping into your power and owning who you are and saying, yeah, I'm not going to play that role anymore. I'm getting rid of that identity. This is my new identity, and putting that hat on and wearing it proudly and being that. Then suddenly all these other things start falling into place. And a lot of
They
times
do.
it's listening to your heart.
It is. And one of the things I think that happens in business is everyone else has told you what your value is. I mean, you get a certain pay grade, pay raise, office size, whatever the perks are today in your company. And so what I love about what Maureen is saying is that when you truly know your own personality type, then you need to start valuing it. And if we tie it back to recovery at work, when you truly know who you are and you truly know your value, then you can begin to take the same recovery tools that you use at home and bring them into the workplace, because we cannot be at work without our recovery tools. So Maureen, in the next couple of minutes, can you talk a little bit about what maybe 2 or 3 recovery tools would you recommend that people have in their toolkit at work?
Well, I think there's two things that jump to my mind right away. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you can install this belief that nobody wants to see you fail, then you will reach out for help if you're struggling in any way, and you can get the help that you need. Might not be from the first person you ask, right? But and then the second thing is, if most people know if they're an introvert or an extrovert. And I say for all you extroverts out there, zip it. Start listening a whole lot more. And for all you introverts, the people who don't talk a lot, open up, find your voice and start sharing more about who you are and what it is, how you can help. And I think those are tools right there that will really expand yourself into a greater way of being in recovery, a greater expansion of your personality, of all that you can be, of your potential.
So interesting. I found more people today, and I think I'm one of them, that have a new title, which is extroverted introvert. Like they're truly an introvert, but they're in an extroverted role. So any advice for those folks that are having to really, it takes a lot for them to do their work because,
It's
as you
energy.
said, why it takes a lot of energy because they really are, they would rather not be talking at all.
Right. Yeah, you
Right.
don't, if you're an introvert, don't go take a sales job. Like,
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, be who you are and get in alignment with that, and then everything will fall into place.
that's great. That's great. All right, well, we're going into a break. You're listening to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare, and we'll be right back. Hello, and welcome back to Hungry for Answers. And to learn more about my work, please go to clarity.com. That's CLARE-ITY.com. And I'm here with Maureen Ross Gemme. And Maureen, how can people connect with you?
You can find me at emergeleadershipacademy.com. I'd love to see you.
Yes, that's great. So, Maureen, so we're talking about recovery at home and at work and the importance of employees being engaged, mind, body, spirit, and emotion. And I think we're also it's important to have leaders be engaged on a mind, body, spirit, and emotional level. And one of the things that I know you're a proponent of is leaders being very transparent at work about their recovery journey. Can you talk about that?
Well, I think that people who are in recovery, they know how to work on themselves, and they do make good leaders because a lot of those qualities are what people would describe when you think about your favorite boss or the best boss you ever had. They will
Yeah.
say things like, oh, they're a good listener. They really cared about me. They listened to me. They gave me great assignments, and they were integrity and honest. I had the honesty factor. So as you think about those things that you have, there are some times that you can also, if you are in recovery, I just really urge you, for so many years, like I have 37 years of being clean and sober. And for many of those years in the 12-step program, one of the principles is, anonymity. But anonymity, I think, was really good for men in the 40s and 50s and 60s, back in the 1900s. But today, there are so many people screaming out for help. So there are a lot of people who are emotionally distraught and upset, and they are using different substances and different things. And there's signs and signals. And we know leadership and people who are in recovery, we got great BS detectors. So we know when it's false or when it's not, or when somebody's being authentic or they're not. And because we listen right to our intuition and our heart. But if you know that somebody is hurting, I encourage you to reach out instead of just, oh, this is based on attraction rather than promotion. Reaching out and telling somebody, you know what, if you need help, I can help you, or I can get you to some resources. I can share with you. But oftentimes, I think people just turn a blind eye because we all have so much to do. But when we start really helping other people, it does move your soul to a higher level of love and happiness in the world when you can help somebody else. And there's so many people that need help out there. So I just wanted to encourage people who were, quote, still hiding, to not hide anymore. We need to end the stigma that there's something wrong with substance abuse disorder. It's a national crisis,
It
right?
is. I was just reading yesterday that we have reached the highest level of people that overdose this year on pharmaceuticals ever. This year was the worst, and we see so many people, and it's not just substance abuse. People are addicted to so many different things. You heard that in my intro to intro, and even people are just,
Well, they're
gaming
committing
and
suicide
shopping,
too.
and they're
And
committing
they're,
suicide.
yes,
Right.
it's highest levels ever in the world
Yes. Yes.
because they
So
feel so alone and they're not alone.
what can employers do to recognize and support their employees who are struggling and potentially in addiction? What kind
Find,
of programs that could they
yes,
offer?
well, find a good wellness coach, somebody that you can bring in that can run some programs that people can come and explore different things. Find a good, add those programs to your list. Get people like into lunchtime yoga. Provide a little room that when your stresses get too much throughout the day, you can go in there, turn the light off, and meditate for 5 minutes with some music or something. I mean, there are so many ways that people need to sometimes just renew and refresh themselves for a short period of time. But I would also provide employee assistance programs, links to like the Wheeler Clinic and other types of places, and pay for that. This is something that's going to, if you can get your people into recovery, then people are going to be so much more productive because
They
they're not
are.
just so stuck in all their shit. So that's the only way I know how to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. And learn how to support people in recovery, because I keep going back to this. I may sound like a broken record today, but you are not just in recovery at home. You're in recovery at work. And if you're not getting the support at work, it may be very hard to sustain your recovery at home, because if you come home completely a wreck at
Right.
the end of the day, it's going to be really hard to maintain your sobriety from whatever your addictive vices or source or substance.
When
And
you're
so,
abstaining from
yeah,
whatever it is, your escape, right? It's really hard. Sometimes it feels like work is a relief, but honestly, for employers and leaders, when you can really connect with your people and show them that you care and do some team building, culture building, that we are supporting each other through whatever it is we have to go through. The biggest reason people leave a company is because their managers,
yes,
suck. But the biggest reason people stay with a company is because they feel connected to the people. When they are connected to the people, there's going to be so much more retention there because people feel loyal and they feel supported. And it's like, I don't care if I don't make that much money here. I'm happy because I feel like my life and everything I'm adding adds value and is meaningful. So that's
right.
that's that's the goal.
And so that makes complete sense, because if you can feel that connection at work and you can feel that connection at home, then you can stay in long-term recovery.
Right.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about is, well, let's finish this conversation about, are you seeing any new trends, Maureen, in your work and in the recovery community, that for folks in recovery at home and at work?
There are so many ways to get into recovery. It's not just 12-step programs anymore. There's smart programs out there. There's counselors, there's coaches, there's wellness, people out there. There's, of course, there's therapy everywhere. And your insurance is going to pay for some of that, but other stuff it's not. But there's also free resources too. So I'm not sure if I'm seeing any, quote, new trends. You just know that you have to reach out. You have to trust somebody first to reach out for that help and know that it doesn't mean anything, like you're not a bad person or you shouldn't be ashamed to
No.
ask for help. You should reach out because that's the best gift you could ever give yourself. And life is so much better, right? We all know that. We all have our story. Life is so much better without having to depend on escape all the time. And you don't have to. You can live in this life, have a really good time, no matter what life throws at you. But it's an internal job. You have to do that inner work. But there's so much help out there, Robin. Don't you agree?
I agree. And I have a new trend that I'm that I'm putting out there.
Oh, good.
In December, I'm launching, and December 1 should be available in Amazon, but I'm also teaching a course called The Right Recovery, WRITE. And I am a writing coach and
Cool.
I am in recovery, and I've put together a journal that people can buy on Amazon to use writing as a way to enhance their recovery, writing as a way to get to their deepest feelings, writing as a way to plan their future. And so I'm very excited about that. And I will, as I said, on December 10, I will be teaching the right recovery in a webinar for the Connecticut Center for Addiction Recovery, CCAR, CCAR,
CC.
the Connecticut Center for Addiction Recovery. So if you're interested in being on the right recovery webcast, just connect with CCAR. And then, of course, as I said, the Right Recovery Journal will be available in Amazon. The goal is December 1. And I'm just really excited about this because I think it's a fun way. I actually didn't have any idea how fun it would be to actually create this. But when I really started looking at it and saying, wow, what would be fun questions for people? And how can I take these 7 steps that I think in ways that you can really use writing? And what's beautiful, folks, is that if you have any interest in sharing your story, this is a great start, because
That's
at the
awesome.
end you'll have your recovery story in writing by the time you're done with the journal. And I always say that when you write your story, you heal yourself. When you share it, you heal others. And Maureen, you
So,
were going to
so I'm
say?
step two, because once you get your story down, you can be on my podcast. It's called
Yes,
Emerge, Evolve, Lead. And I have people who are in recovery share their story, how they transformed their lives
yes,
and what their life is like now and how they're giving back in the world. So please come and listen, because I have some great inspiring stories. Robin has been on my podcast.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's a great second step, right? Once you get your story
yes.
down, come and tell it.
Come and tell
Absolutely.
it. I
That's
agree. So Maureen, let's talk a little bit about your work while we have some time left. What would you like folks to know about the Emerge Leadership Academy, and uh, why they should come there, and what would they ultimately receive?
okay. Great. I have three sort of services that I offer. One is the Emerge, Evolve, Lead podcast, which I just shared with you. Second is I do work with leaders and their teams to do leadership training. And a lot of that is about discovering who you are and how the team can work better together
Mhm.
and really communicate, resolve conflicts, and boost your emotional intelligence so everybody's happier at work. And the third thing is one-on-one coaching with my Recovery at Work program, which we talked a little bit about earlier, in that I do help people who are getting ready to transition. Maybe they're going into a new job, maybe they don't know where they're going yet, but in any case, always that internal work within will help you to be a better leader, to come out on top and to step into your greatest self. And that's
Yeah,
working through, energy and stuff. So it's so fun.
it sounds
That's how
fun.
I
And I, as you all know, I've known Maureen. I think it's longer than 30 years, but I'm not
offer.
sure. And Maureen and I
25
went,
anyway. Yeah.
yeah, we went through corporate America together and entrepreneurship, and I just really know what a great leader Maureen is, and she'll really help your team. So Maureen, we're heading into the holidays now, and this is my last show before Thanksgiving, and it's a hard time for people that are in addiction and recovery, because Thanksgiving is really a overindulgence holiday, right? And we
Mm.
tend to overindulge. There's probably 6 different types of potatoes on the table, right? Like, how do we maintain, how do we have the light of recovery be what leads us to the Thanksgiving table? How do we trust ourselves and trust that we can make good decisions and be healthy during the holidays.
Well, it's always a little bit difficult because normally most of us return to our family of origin, right?
Yeah,
And sometimes there can be triggers there and people that maybe are harder to be with and so forth, or they don't understand recovery, or they're still actively, practicing their addiction. So those can be triggers. And I say, find yourself an app and connect online to a recovery meeting if you can, right in the middle of the day if you want. And the second thing is have a lot of compassion for yourself.
yeah,
Ratchet up the compassion. Treat yourself as you would treat a 5-year-old who just got bullied, and you're going to comfort them.
yeah,
Honestly, do not beat yourself up. Just, eat what you want to eat and be calm, be compassionate, and be forgiving with whatever happens, because we're all just doing the best we can and you can get through this. It's just another day.
yes. Thank you. I'm seeing that little sign, be calm.
Yeah.
You should say, be calm. It's only Thanksgiving.
And obviously get in touch with your gratitude, because there's
Yes,
so many things to be grateful for. Write the list. I write it
right,
every
Phyllis.
Thanksgiving, and then I hone it and write it again on
Yes,
New Year's Eve, because it's just such a
yeah.
great
So I do
tool.
love that. So focus on what you're grateful for over
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, and just keep mindful of your health and your ultimate wellness goals. So Maureen, thank you so much for being with me today. And
Thank you,
you've been on,
Robin.
yep, on Hungry for Answers. You've been listening to Hungry for Answers, and we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody. Bye. Thank you for tuning into Hungry for Answers. Learning to love ourselves is the one true solution to addiction. Make a commitment to healing today and see how you can reach your ultimate potential. Remember, you have a divine right to a life filled with love, joy, peace, and abundance. To learn more about me and my offerings, please go to clarity.com. That's Claire, CLARE -ity.com. See you next time.